Hey there. Welcome to the CMMC Compliance Guide podcast. I'm Stacey.
And I'm Brooke.
From Justice IT Consulting, where we help businesses like yours navigate CMMC and NIST 800-171 compliance. We're hired guns, getting companies fast-tracked to compliance, but today we're here to give you all the secrets for free. So if you want to tackle it yourself, you're equipped to do so. Let's dive into today's episode and keep your business on track. Today, we're diving into one of the most critical topics for DoD contractors: how CMMC compliance affects your ability to win and keep defense contracts. So, Brooke, why does CMMC matter when it comes to DoD contracts?
Well, if you're in the DoD sector space now, manufacturing or related, then you already know that cybersecurity compliance is kind of a huge deal. There's been no shortage of talk about it. There's been no shortage of communications coming from primes to their subcontractors. You know, hey, you need to meet this compliance. You need to do this. You need to do that. So that's no secret, and it's been out there. So we'll kind of talk today a little bit about why it's important and what it means for those contracts and how to keep those contracts.
Do you have to have a CMMC certification to get DoD contracts, or can you just do it retroactively?
Currently, no. You don't have to have a CMMC certification. In fact, CMMC Level 2 certifications just became available to go through that process just recently, so just towards the end of the year. So those are just now available, and so they're not required on contracts yet. Compliance is, but not those CMMC certifications. However, whenever the next 48 CFR rule comes into place, goes final, and then in effect, then you'll absolutely have to have a CMMC, your certification. If that's the level that you're told you have to have, then you have to have that in place before you can have that contract.
Are you seeing that companies that are CMMC compliant win more than their competitors?
So, of course, this is kind of third hand, I guess, if you would, because we're not on the winning contract side necessarily, but we help our customers meet that compliance. And so what we see is the ones that are compliant are getting more contracts. It's easier for them to get contracts because they're green in the primes system, or they meet those requirements already for direct government contracts. So yes.
So based off of what you've been seeing, how strict is the DoD getting with these requirements, and what should businesses expect in the next coming years?
As I just alluded to, coming up here, we're expecting maybe the Q1 of 25 for the 48 CFR rule to go final. And so if it does, when it does, not if, but when it does, that's going to make CMMC and certifications required on contracts. It won't be all contracts all at once. There's going to be 4 phases, but it is coming. The train is coming. You ought to be able to see that big headlight in the tunnel because it's big and bright and shining. But it is coming. It is going to start. That 48 CFR rule should go final, should come out Q1. Of course, that's a guesstimate. The government could surprise us. The DoD could surprise us. But anyway, it should go final sometime soon. And then have 60 days for it to go into effect. And then phase 1 is going to be self-attestation, basically what you're doing right now with a few changes because of this 32 CFR that was finalized. But self-attestation for the first year. Each of these phases is a year long. The second phase is really where it starts. And that second phase is where they are going to start requiring CMMC Level 2 certifications on contracts. Like I said, it won't be all at once. They did leave wiggle room in the wording. If you look, they can, say, hey, we can, on this contract, it's not going to be mandatory on the first year, but on option years it may be, or maybe, here's a special contract and it's not quite time yet, but here's a special contract and we're going to go ahead and require it on this one. So they did leave themselves a little wiggle room, but basically a year after that 48 CFR goes into effect, that is going to start being required on contracts.
So I know there are certain levels of compliance, and each company may have a different level of compliance they need to adhere to. Can you get into that a little bit further?
There's level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 1 is going to be your basic COTS, off-the-shelf things. Level 2, which is going to be most everybody we deal with. In fact, I don't think we have any clients that have been told they're just going to be level 1. Likewise, we have not had any clients that have been told they're going to have to be level 3 either. But there is level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 2 is the basic NIST 800-171 controls with CMMC wrapped around it, of course, that we have to be compliant with and get certifications on. Level 3 follows NIST 800-172, and it is like I said, it is a lot more stringent. We don't have any clients yet who have been told they have to be level 3 compliant, but there are different levels.
Would it make sense for someone to get CMMC compliant even if they're not asked to or required?
It's funny you asked that question. I actually talked to somebody on the phone the other day. They were curious about what we did and this whole CMMC stuff and the compliance. What in the world is that? And of course, since he asked that question, I realized that he probably wasn't in the DIB and the Defense Industrial Base, right? And so basically told him, what we do, of course, but what this means to companies, and the fact is real that the government and primes are going to be looking for companies who are already certified when this comes out, when everything goes final. They're going to be looking for companies that are already certified. They're also going to be looking now. Right now, I can tell you that the primes are really, I guess, rewarding is a good phrase anyway. They're subcontractors that are green in their system, which means they're fully compliant. So if you're fully compliant, that's an easy call for them. So and if you want to go get certified, and that's a good way to get in and have a marketing tactic to say, here's my certification, I'm ready to go. That's a really good marketing tactic. Like I said, contractors are looking for that. Main prime contractors are, so that would be a really good thing to do. And the person I talked to was very interested in doing this and doing what he does currently, but getting more into DoD contracts can be a good thing. We also have other clients that are already in the DIB that they're to this point, they want to get their certification now, so they can be ahead of the curve and ahead of the game and go ahead and get those contracts rolling in and say make it easy, but the whole process is not easy. That's kind of a ironic, kind of an irony there, but so yes.
What is your take on businesses preparing for CMMC Level 2 versus Level 3? Should they go beyond the minimum requirements?
So that's a very good question. For Level 3, it is pretty intense, and a lot of people will tell you Level 2 is intense, and there's a lot to it, and there is. But Level 3 is another giant step to take. So if all you need is Level 2, I would say stick with Level 2. If you really need to go Level 3, or there's some business you want to win, that may be Level 3, then I would say definitely go for it. But Level 2 is going to cover the basics of everything else.
What can business owners do to prevent the loss of their hard-earned contracts?
Really, don't wait to get certified. Don't wait to start the process. It's a long, hard process. Not only that, the process to get compliant is a long process. The process to get certified, because that's different, is a long process. And right now, I can tell you, I think I talked about it in the last podcast we had, but the assessors, the see-through PAOs, they're a few months out before they can even start right now. So, and then that's, if you're ready and you think you're compliant, ready to go, that's probably at least a 2-month process. So you're talking 6 months, maybe a little longer before you can, if you decide to pull the trigger today, before you can get that certification. So if you have a contract you want to bid on, you need to plan to have that certification in hand, by the time you win that contract. Don't wait.
You mentioned that compliance and being certified is different. Could you actually just quickly go over what the key differences may be?
Yeah, sure. So compliance is you are compliant with all the controls and all the CMMC standards that you have to be compliant with. Getting certified is another step where you have to have and this is what we're talking about. You hire the C3PAO to come in and do the certification assessment. That is certification. They look over everything and go, yep, you are compliant. Here, you're going to get a certification. I wish it were that easy, but but that's basically the difference.
So if a business owner wants to be compliant, how would they go about handling the paperwork?
So as far as handling the paperwork goes, there's a couple of pieces to that, but basically you need to make sure. I've said this before in other podcasts, so if you've watched the podcast, documentation, and more documentation. But you need to have good, clear policies to where if you give me the policies, I need to be able to read them and go, I understand that, So good, clear policies, detailed policies. You need to have all your documentation in one spot, which could be one folder on your network, or it could be a protected folder, of course, but one folder on your network. But really a GRC platform, a governance, risk, and compliance platform, some software, is really the best thing to do, because you can have basically a living, breathing SSP, POAM, all your policies, everything else right there in one spot. So that would be a great way to first make sure you have all that documentation, make sure it's clear, concise, detailed, I should say, I guess, and then make sure it's in one place, easy to get to, easy to manage, which would be a GRC platform.
If business owners don't want to do this themselves, is there someone else they can put in charge of this?
Well, there absolutely is. I mean, there's so you could hire an external consultant to come in and help you out. You could hire, I guess, another form of an external consultant would be an IT services provider like us. But of course, either just an external consultant or an IT services provider, I can't talk today, would be, you want to make sure that they know what they're talking about, that they do this. And so you can look for people that are registered practitioners and registered with a registered practicing organization. You can find that on the Cyber AB in their marketplace. You could find CMMC certified professionals, CCPs. So for instance, we have RPs and CCPs on staff because we wanted to go get trained and understand and really know, what the assessor is going to be looking for and how to implement all these controls. So it's good to look for those kind of people who have those kind of controls, or the certifications, I should say.
In your experience, what's the biggest mistake businesses make when it comes to staying compliant?
One of the biggest failures, I guess, to people staying compliant is they make a change in their network and don't change any of their paperwork, or they don't change their policies, they don't change their procedures, they don't even change their network diagram. So changes should result in changes in all your documentation. You've got to remember that, because if you've had network changes, then you're not compliant until you've made sure you're compliant and documented it. The other big thing I'd say actually right now that's going on, I just probably would have said this first because I've seen it a lot. There is a lot of M&A activity, a lot of mergers and acquisitions. There's a lot of M&A activity. And so when a company comes in and buys up a company that's already, they've got their SSP, they've got all their policies, their cage code, they're doing business with the federal government or primes, that larger entity or that other entity, it doesn't have to be larger, but that other entity comes in and buys them, then that's a structural change to the to that company. Now, they can actually keep everything the same and have that as a wholly owned subsidiary. But however you want to do that, but that is a change in that business, and you're no longer compliant. Like I said, it kind of depends on how you do business, but a lot of times what happens is they come in and then they start integrating their IT infrastructure, or maybe even people and processes. So that is the biggest thing I really see that happens that people don't address right away.
So for the business owners that do have those existing contracts, is there a way that they could lose those lucrative contracts?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of ways they could do that. So if you currently have contracts and you said, hey, I meet all these certifications, we're at 110, we're good. Our SPRS score is 110, and then you get ready and you come in and have a certification and you fail that certification, then I would probably get a little worried that I might lose some contracts. So it's very important to make sure you're on top of the game. Of course, then the other thing is if you have some sort of breach or anything like that that exposes a problem that you weren't addressing properly, and maybe you didn't tell the whole truth, or you stretched the truth a little bit, you could be liable for the False Claims Act, which would be a big deal. Just ask. I think it's Georgia Tech, and I can't remember the other one, but ask them, and they can tell you.
Let's say a business owner failed an assessment. Could they get more assessments in the future, or are they stuck with that failed assessment?
Yeah, so if you fail an assessment, you can absolutely get another assessment. Now, that the timing is a thing. So, I mean, if you, like we were just talking about a minute ago, there's assessors, see-through PAOs are not, they're booked several months out, a few months out right now, 3 months, 4 months, something like that. So anyway, but they're booked a few months out. So getting the assessment might take some time. Going through the assessment will take at least a couple of months probably. And so, you're talking about at the very least another 5 months before you could possibly get that certification. But you also have to address what it was that caused the problem. So is that something that you can address in a week? Is it something you could address in 2 or 3 months? So you have to add that time to it as well. So absolutely, you can go through, you can get another assessment. Timing is the deal. It won't be immediate. It won't be quick. It'll be relatively slow. So, but the other part of that is question as to your current contracts. What happens with those? If they say, hey, you told us you were at 110 and you've been that way for 3 years, and now you fail an assessment, what's the deal? That's basically a lack of trust now. Is there something that changed that caused it? Is there, what's the deal? So now you have a loss of trust, and you have to build that trust again. Even if everything turns out fine, and it's just something minor, and you got it fixed within a week, and then I have to wait several months to go back through it. But anyway, you got it fixed within a week, then there's that. You got to build that trust back and make sure that they know that everything's good. And sometimes that's the gray area, because they're like, hey, can we even trust you now? So we've seen that happen with some other incidents, email incidents where people didn't necessarily want to turn on something simple like MFA. So that's a really good story. Buy me a beer sometime, I'll tell you about it. But yeah, the reputational thing is a big thing.
What are the legal consequences of not being compliant if you're required to?
Well, the legal consequences, well, first of all, if you're not compliant and you don't get that certification, you just won't get a contract. But second of all, if you're supposed to be compliant and you said you were, and it's found out you're not, then you could be held liable for the False Claims Act, and that is a big deal. That is a very big deal. It has some teeth in it, and it can cost you contracts. It can cost you millions of dollars, or it may even cost you some jail time. But it's It's a big deal. They are arguably, I guess. Anyway, they're making some examples of a couple of entities right now, and Georgia Tech is one of those, I believe. Off the top of my head, I can't remember who the other one is, but they said they were doing all these things. Now, they were pretty egregious from what it looks like. They said they were doing these things, and they just completely weren't. It wasn't a difference of opinion of, yeah, we're doing this, and it meets that control, and the government says, well, it doesn't really meet that control. It wasn't like that. It was, they just weren't doing those things. So it was pretty egregious. So if it's pretty egregious, I would expect to be hit with a False Claims Act. And that is nothing that I would want to have happen to me or my company, I can tell you that.
What is the worst case scenario for a business that assumes they can just wing it with compliance?
Well, if you're going to, like a lot of things in life, I mean, if you're going to wing it, then it may not turn out well for you. We just talked about the False Claims Act, that could come into play there. Winging it with something this complex and this strict, I guess, as this compliance goes, winging it is asking for trouble. It's either asking to have to recover and spend a whole lot more money, a lot more time, have to recover your reputation, have to, there's a lot of things winging it can damage, and there's several things winging it is not a big deal in. I went to the rodeo last night, and I'm sure some of those guys winged it as they came out of the chute. So, winging it does not have a place in CMMC compliance. I can tell you that much.
So for the subcontractors out there, would they have to make sure their suppliers are compliant?
Yes, they do. And this is nothing new, but it was specifically called out in the last CFR. And it's, like I said, nothing new, but you're supposed to make sure that your subcontractors, anybody that you use, that is going to be handling the data in question, so the CUI or the FCI, that they have to meet the appropriate compliance. So if you're level 2, they're likely going to need to be level 2 as well, unless all you're giving them is contract information. And then I guess at that point, they may just need to be level 1. I would make darn sure that's the case, though, before you make that decision and think it's okay. But it is up to you to make sure that your subcontractors are compliant, just like you are, and that is exactly what these primes are doing and what they've been required to do. Lockheed, Bell, Raytheon, all those, they're saying, we have to be compliant. Now our subcontractors that get business from us, they have to be compliant. That's what they've been doing all along. Those subcontractors don't realize necessarily that they were supposed to be doing the same thing all along, and but it's spelled out, and you have to do that. I'm not saying you have to do that now. You've been having to do it all along, but you really need to start now, I guess, if you hadn't been doing it.
How can they hold their vendors accountable?
That's a good question. I would just take a page out of the Prime's playbook, really. I don't know the correct answer a assessor is necessarily going to want, but they're going to want some sort of proof that you tried to make sure that your subs are compliant. So it could be a simple questionnaire. It could be some contract language, just like they do to you. Here, are you subject? You have to be, or you're subject to DFARS 252, 204, 7012, right? Or whatever it may be. And when they signed that contract, they just said yes to that. So I would probably go a little bit further and clarify, hey, here's a separate questionnaire. Please fill this out so we can verify that you are CMMC level 1, 2, or 3 compliant.
What are the best ways to ensure vendors don't become a weak link in your compliance efforts?
Really, it goes back to what I was just talking about. If you are, especially if you're looking for some new suppliers, that would be one of the questionnaires that I give them. Are you compliant with CMMC level whatever? It could even be more detailed questionnaire that they have to fill out. If you have to be certified, the question would be, are you certified? Do you hold a level 2 certification? Please provide me some proof of that. So that would be what you the kind of things you want to vet your new vendors with. Same thing with your current vendors. You want to say, hey, we've been doing the business for 150 years, but now I need you to sign this for me. So
that wraps up our episode over CMMC compliance and how to maintain and win those lucrative DoD contracts. If you have any questions about what we covered, please reach out to us. We're here to help you. So you can text, email, or call in your questions, and we'll answer them here for free on the podcast. Just reach out to us at cmmccomplianceguide.com.